control. Her gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She comes me with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. She's in my head wherever I go, controlling everything that I do. She's over me. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Hope you're having a wonderful night, and thank you so much for being here with me. I'm reporting live from apparently from the opening to hell, where it is, in fact, apparently frozen over. We we got about a foot of snow overnight, and it's enough to make me want to weep. But I spent a good majority of the day out there shoveling, and I know that, I don't have a lot to shovel, but I just hate it. I just don't like it anymore. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a whiner, but whatever the case is, I'm trying to adjust my lighting overhead so I don't look like I'm coming from a cave. So, hold on. Yeah, that's a little better. What do you think? What do you think, guys? Is that lovely or is that all right? What do you think? I think that'll be all right. So, I have a remote control on my light bulb up there. I got one of them smart bulbs, so it's apparently smarter than me. But welcome to the show. This is the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and it's Saturday evening, and normally I'd say I'm not alone here, but welcome my good friend and co-host, Mr. Don Longbeard, but Mr. Don Longbeard got more snow than me, and he had spent, I'm sure, a large part of his day shoveling that white fluffy hell all the way off of his long driveway, and of course the berm that is left surreptitiously by the snowplows as they whiz by, potentially erasing any progress he made. It's still snowing too, and it's going to be for a long time, so I don't know. I'm a little bit whiny about it, but it's my show and I can do that. So I hope you guys are doing wonderful. Thank you guys for being here. The phone lines, of course, are always open on the portal. If you want to call in and be a part of the show, would love to hear from you. The phone line is 720-923-0500. You can call in and join me on this journey into the portal. If you have something paranormal to talk about, love to hear from you. But great to see all of you guys out there. I know that it's always a real honor to see people spending parts of their weekends, your weekends, with me, because I know how sacred weekends are. And so it's a real honor that you guys keep coming in and spending it here. I've got a bunch of stuff pulled up to go over tonight. I'm just waiting to see about, let's see, nothing yet. Okay. I'm trying to finagle something here, but I'm not going to let you know unless unless it actually comes through, because I don't want to get your hopes up for something that's not going to happen. But maybe it will. We'll see. But I got some stories lined up for you guys. Again, if you have anything paranormal that you'd like to share, but you don't want to call in, it's kind of freaks you out or seems a little intimidating, but you still like to share a story or an experience you've had, please feel free to email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. Again, paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. We had a great show last night with Deb, and it was wonderful. Lots of great call-ins, and thank you to all of you who have participated in last night's show. It was really fun, and Deb had a wonderful time and did wonderful, of course. It's just really neat to sit back and listen to her work, and I don't know. I mean, it still bakes my, cooks my bacon. What's your name? And then that's it. And what do you want to know about? And then boom, she just starts, saying things and saying relevant things. And I'm like, where does that come from? How does that work? That's so amazing. So thank you, Deb. It was a wonderful show and you did marvelous. And it's always a pleasure. And thank you so much for sharing your gifts with all of us here on the portal. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure all the callers did as well. So we'll just keep chugging along here. And should I get a message, I will see what we can do about expanding tonight's show just a little bit. But first off, what was it I was going to do? I was going to do something right off the front end here, and I'm not remembering what it was because, well, actually we had some technical issues prior to the launch of the show. So that's kind of what I'm waiting on, but not really waiting, but not really waiting. But I do have some things to go over with you here. First of all, I want to talk about this other phenomena that I found. This one's really creepy, and I have to admit, I don't recall ever hearing about this one before, but it seems, I guess it stands to reason, since no matter what you think suddenly the paranormal will surface something you've never heard of before. Now, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, are all of these things really out there? Is that really possible that all these things are out there and we never knew about it? And, I guess you have to wonder a little bit because, of course, there's a lot of very creative people that take a lot of creative license with experiences, or just they fabricate them all together, and that's certainly a possibility. But I came across these stories of this new phenomenon that I'm really not as familiar with, and maybe I've bumped into it before, but I'm not remembering. But it's an article entitled "Strange Paranormal Encounters with White-Eyed Kids." So we already know about the black-eyed kids, and of course, they are a pretty big part of the Paranormal Portal and some of the long-standing lore of the portal and legendary tales of shows gone by. But black-eyed kids they're creepy enough, and I really think that a lot of the legend and circumstance of the black-eyed kids ended up becoming part of the vampire lore, which is filtered down into our popular culture of today, because they do seem to need permission to come in. They do seem to, if they are invited in, they do seem to cause a lot of pain and problems for people that let them in. And it's an act of charity that just somehow goes just wrong. It just goes wrong. And so that's the black-eyed kids. Now these white-eyed kids I'm not familiar with. So we're going to be going through this and learning it together because I don't recall ever bumping into this before, but I bumped into it today as I was pulling up stuff for tonight's show. And I'm going to blow it up so I can actually read the microfiche that they they published it as. So let's get into this. It says, reports of the phenomena of the strange beings known as black-eyed kids have been reported for decades and generally follow a certain frightening pattern. The children, usually in pairs, but not always, appear in mostly rural or sparsely populated areas. They typically appear as normal children from afar, but a closer inspection will reveal that they have sickly or pale or pallor to them, a pale pallor, sorry, to them, and that their pupils are completely dark pools of black without any discernible iris or pupil akin to the eyes of a shark. Although the tales may vary in their details, these mysterious entities are almost always described as exuding an intense wave of dread and panic, and their eyes are said to have certain disturbing, sinister, or hypnotic quality to them. Many of you probably know of these entities and have become quite a fixture in the world of the paranormal, but what many may not realize is there is another permutation of this phenomena. While considerably rarer than reports of black-eyed kids, there are a few reports of similar mysterious figures that, instead of black eyes, have eyes that are pure white. And while scarce, these accounts are every bit as creepy and bizarre. And this article is coming from esophoria.net. So esophoria, esophoria.net. So let's see what it says. One of the most elaborate and striking reports of white-eyed kids is a report that featured on the site Pararational concerning a man who says that in 2013 he was living with his brother and his brother's girlfriend in a fairly small southern town. He claims that one day he went for a ride in his truck at around 3 a.m. and on the way back stopped at a small grocery store to get some cigarettes, parking his vehicle around the corner. And it was as he was getting back into his pickup truck to head back home that the weirdness began with a tapping at his window. When he looked to see what the source was, he says that there was a young boy of around 8 or 9 years of age standing there just beyond the glass, and the child was standing there completely motionless, and when asked what he wanted, merely politely asked the witness to roll down the window. And the witness says, excuse me, hold on. My hand started to reach for the crank, but I stopped myself. That pit in my stomach was just starting to feel wrong. I shook my head and asked, "What do you need, kid?" Another few seconds before the kid replied, "Mister, I think I'm lost." I started to realize that besides the kid's mouth moving, he hasn't budged at all since knocking on my window. No change in facial expression, nothing. "Where are your parents?" I realized that my voice was starting to quaver. What the hell? I'm a veteran. I'm not easily intimidated, and this is just a kid. He said, "I can't find them." "Can you drive me home, please? Please take me home. Just unlock the doors and I'll get in." Well, at this point, I start to feel like something's up, and I look away from the kid for the first time to make sure I'd put my keys in the ignition. Check. I glanced over my right shoulder, wondering if this kid was bait for some kind of robbery, but there weren't even cars behind me for about a block, let alone people standing nearby. And I'm psyching myself out. This kid needs some help, I told myself. So I looked back at the kid, and my blood ran cold. Why hadn't I noticed before? The kid has no pupils. Hell, he doesn't even have irises. It's just white. Not like he's blind, like where the pupils are milky, just stark white eyes. He hasn't even moved a muscle. And then I noticed his skin, pale, almost translucent. The witness by this point was feeling terror overcome him in the presence of this thing, some nameless dread and sense of impending doom washing through him, and his shaking hand started up the ignition. The kid, up at this point, was still rather calm, timid, and pleading, but upon realizing that the witness was about to leave, his whole demeanor soured. Taking on an ominous tone, the witness explains, "As soon as that thing standing outside my truck heard the engine fire, he scowled and started knocking on the window. Not the light tapping from before, but hard. 'Mister, just let me in your truck and take me home. It's okay.' I don't know how, but I could feel his voice more than I heard it. Where previously what he was saying was hard to make out, well, I threw the truck into drive and peeled out of there, and glancing in the rearview mirror only once, I'd cleared a full block, and the kid still had barely moved and only turned his head to face me. What the hell, I kept telling myself. I couldn't say anything else, just kept driving at probably 15 miles an hour over the speed limit, and I'm pretty sure I blew through a couple of stop signs. It wasn't until I actually pulled into my driveway that I realized I was even heading towards home. I put the truck in park and took a few breaths to calm myself. And after I got my bearings, I looked outside and realized it was dark out, late twilight, almost night. I looked at my watch, which read 7:01, and 7:01, and I was no more than 5 miles away from the tobacco shop when it took me almost 2.5 hours to get home. When did I lose that time? Wow, that's crazy.
Are you there?
I am here. Who are you, hacker? What's
Oh,
going on?
don't you want to know?
I'm a little concerned, ladies and gentlemen. It seems that our stream has been hijacked.
Act.
I'm not sure what's going on. Some bearded man has appeared in the other screen. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our co-host, Mr. Don Longbeard. I gotta remember which
Hi.
button to push now.
Yeah, it was a Skype update I had to do.
Oh, those bastards. Well, I'm glad you got it sorted out. That's what I was waiting for, ladies and gentlemen. We were able to get Mr. Longbeard on the horn with us from the remote
I can
studio.
see me on the computer. I can see me.
Jesus. Wow. You shoveling a little hard out there, were you?
Yeah, it was a rough day. It was a rough day. Uh Anyhow, yeah, so you only got a foot of snow, huh?
I don't know. I think so. I felt like about 5 feet, but it's like a foot for sure.
Ah, no doubt.
How much did you
Bombers.
end up with?
I had my when I got down to the end of my driveway at 7 o'clock this morning, there was 2.5 feet of a berm easily.
Oh,
It was
man.
disgusting.
Wow. I don't know if our listeners are going to be used to seeing so much of you.
I know. Huh, it's really bright in here. I don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Probably.
anyhow, this is Don in the studio.
Thanks for not grooming yourself.
Like,
Let me just pluck this food out of my teeth as I'm talking to you. Worldwide
Well,
audience.
well, hold on. Let me get my comb.
No. We do have a call, though.
Oh, cool.
Let's get to the call here. And this is area code 201. You're on the air. Hello? Are you there?
Hello?
Hey, how you doing? You're on the air.
Yes, I am. Hi.
Hi.
All right. Well, thanks. Love your show. I just figured I would give a call. I usually don't get you. I don't usually get on board when you guys are live, but tonight I was. So I just thought it would be fun to call in and share a couple of my stories.
Oh, we'd love to hear.
So, yeah.
By
Great.
all-
Thank you.
go ahead.
Yeah. So this happened to me, a couple of years ago. I live in New Jersey, and I was living in a very old house. I would say probably built in about 1915, 1920. And I got this apartment. I was living in one apartment, and a friend of mine in my church, this house was owned by my local Russian Orthodox church. It was sort of like an investment that they bought a couple of houses so that they could have an income from the rent. So one of my friends was living in the apartment, and she decided to move out to buy her own house. And she said, "Oh, do you want to have this apartment?" And it was a nice apartment. It was affordable in the New York area. That's really important.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll move in." So, long story short, I moved in, and about 2 months went by, and I started to I just noticed that there were strange things going on in the kitchen. Just things falling that were, not even near the edge of the table, footsteps, things like that. And I just, I kind of ignored it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
You ignore a lot when the rent is good and the apartment is nice. And, ultimately, I started to really notice that it was continuing, and it was only in the kitchen of the apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So a few months later, we were at a barbecue, and I saw the woman that lived there with her son before me. And I had a couple of beers, and I finally said, "Oh, I'm just going to ask her." I said, Nadine, did you ever notice anything strange going on in the apartment? Like anything weird that you can figure out? And she looked at me, and it blew my mind away, because she looked at me and she said, "Oh, you mean the guy in the kitchen?"
Ooh.
And I said, Okay. Yes, the guy in the kitchen. Yes, because I had only noticed anything that was ever happening, in the kitchen. And she says, yeah, my son, her son Michael, it's just, he saw him all the time. Do you see him? I said, well, I don't see him, but I you know, definitely know that there's something going on in there,
Mm-hmm.
and I never really quite noticed it anywhere else in the apartment, and she says, yeah, well, we think there was a ghost there. We didn't want to tell you that before you moved in because you might not have taken the apartment. I said, okay, well, obviously there is a ghost in this in this apartment. So about a year later, I don't know if you're familiar, you probably know, on the northeast coast, 2012, there was the huge Hurricane Sandy
Oh, sure.
that really, knocked us off the grid for a couple of weeks. We had no power
Yeah.
for about 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and the only place that was warm was the kitchen. So I kind of camped out in the kitchen. I could light the kitchen stove. I could stay a little warm and stuff like that. And it was very interesting because I was in the kitchen. There was no power, and I just noticed that there was, well, like a dragging, a thump and a dragging. It was like somebody was, if someone were in the house and they were like walking across my kitchen floor and pulling something behind them.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what it sounded like. And I'm sitting there in the kitchen, there's no power, nothing. I'm like, this sounds like somebody's walking across my kitchen floor,
Mm-hmm.
So it walked across my kitchen floor, and then it stopped. And I said, well, I don't know what the heck is going on. I really don't know. About 2 minutes later, my neighbor upstairs, she knew about this guy. Because she was friends with the person who lived there before me.
Mm-hmm.
And she yells down the staircase, he's up here now. He blew all my candles out. I said, are you kidding me? I ran upstairs. Apparently, whatever spirit was in my kitchen blew all of her candles out and was playing with her curtains. And she was like, get him out of here, get him out of here. So I just think, come back downstairs. I didn't know what else to say. This poor woman was freaked out.
Uh-huh.
So I said, I invited this thing back downstairs. So long story short, about a year or two later after that, I never mentioned it to anyone. I didn't think that, people might have thought that was crazy. But there were some older people in my church, and one of the women in the church said, do you know that someone was killed in your kitchen back in the 1940s?
Oh my
There was a
God.
murder in your kitchen?
Wow.
And I said, tell me more, tell me more,
Right.
And she says, yeah, there was some argument, and this was back, she was about 85 years old. They were elderly, so this was back when she was a little child.
Uh-huh.
And she says, yeah, there was a shootout, there were guns were pulled, and somebody was murdered in your kitchen. And, they took care of it and this and that. And I said, well, you don't say, because I think he might still be hanging around, And lo and behold, and I'm not the only one. I've had people stay over at my apartment. I don't live there anymore.
Sure. Okay.
But, I've had people who have stayed over in my apartment, and they're like, what were you doing you didn't sleep last night, did you? I said, yeah, I slept all night. They're like, oh, we heard you in the kitchen. You were walking around. I said, I wasn't walking around. So, I mean, it's just one of those things that I can say definitely 100%, I experienced something that many other people also experienced. So I firmly believe that I definitely had a spirit in my house. And before I left, I moved out in about 2016, I think. I bought another house and I moved out of there. And before I left the apartment, I kind of said, what's the thing that everyone says? Go to the light. God
Right.
bless you.
Sure.
You can leave. I tried to get the guy out of there. But I don't know if he's still there or not. But I definitely, without a doubt, believe that I lived with his spirit because so many people, corroborated what I thought, and so many other people experienced the same thing that I did
Yeah.
without even knowing about it. So, I just thought it would be a fun thing to call in and tell you that story.
Absolutely.
I'm firmly convinced now that ghosts exist. I don't think it was in any way I never felt it was malevolent. It never tried to hurt me.
Sure.
It was never one of those sort of stories.
Mm-hmm.
It was just present. It was there. I don't know if he even knew I was there. Maybe he was in a different dimension. I'm not sure. I never felt scared of it necessarily, but definitely something. I lived with something for 9 years, certainly. So I just thought it would be fun to call in and share that story with you.
It's also cool that you had a corroborating history for that too, though. I mean, that really kind of closes the book.
Yeah.
Out, you know? A lot of times.
Yeah. I
people
mean,
can't find that.
especially to hear that story after I was having the experiences.
Yes.
I mean, because if I'd heard that story first, I might, my imagination might run away with me.
Right.
But to have these experiences, and then later on, much later on, have these people say, "Oh, somebody was killed in your kitchen back in the 1940s." It just made me feel like, wow, this makes total sense.
Yeah, no kidding. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, I thought so. I wanted to call in and share. I thought it would be fun to call in and share with you guys.
What was your first name, by the way? I'm sorry. I missed it.
I'm Chris.
Chris. Okay. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you, Chris. I know you said you had a couple of stories, but if you want to save the other ones for another time, that's fine too. But we'd love to hear from you if anything else comes up too.
If you have time, unless you're cutting it short, that's okay. I can share it with you. But
we absolutely have time. But I'll tell you what, we're about a minute away from the break, and I don't want you to get into a story. So if you don't mind holding the line, and then we'll come back after break to catch your second story, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Let me know. Okay, I'll hang on.
So no worries at all. We always have time, but ladies and gentlemen, after the show tonight, if you're listening on TFR iHeart, tune in and TalkStream Live. Stick around because Paisley Wild is coming up after us, of course, and she does a wonderful show.